Welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton and Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say, being bonitos to all of our listeners, and Latin America, also across the pond, in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old boys in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south in the land of the free and the home of the brave on a beautiful August the 19th, 2019. Grondo Deportes, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Charlton, sitting back, relaxing, reading my new AARP. It's wonderful to be a senior citizen. You find out all the discounts that you have. They have the great Carlos Santana on the cover.
Yep.
So I'm getting a reminiscence on the old-time music today.
Old time. When you said AARP, I thought that was a new rap group, but I'm sure they got their own following too, Big C. Speaking of AARP, it's all fair in love and war. Just a lot of good things happening in the sports universe. I do want to say we're going to do a lot on Big C Sports coming up this fall. Of course, football tonight with the 49ers playing Denver. They might be a little bit relaxed being up at Mile High, Big C. Also, a lot of baseball players still swinging the bat. A lot of good things happening in the world of sports. But I do want to start off today's show. I hope that everybody had a beautiful, weekend. I didn't get any sleep last night for some personal reasons. I've just been staying up all night. I've been doing that since I was a little boy, and I had a lot of good reason for that last night. But I do want to say, for people going through issues, and I know I got a lot of friends, and sometimes you know somebody's a friend when they pick up the phone and call you, or they at least text you. That means that they at least have you on the mind. And so I want to thank a lot of good friends that have been reaching out to me and just saying thank you. I really appreciate it. I want to say there's a national suicide hotline number for people going through issues. You can call 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. Or for people who prefer to text, you can text 838-255. That's 838-255 for people who need help. Big C, how important is it again, that hotline number that you taught me about? I didn't even know it existed. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's so many people in this country, mainly our veterans, that are going through social and economic and just personal problems. To have something that you can reach out to, that people are willing to talk to you without agendas.
Yeah.
That's what so many people don't understand about this great country. So many people have agendas.
Yep.
But we have so many people that are living tumultuous lives.
Yeah.
Every day they need somebody to reach out to, just talk to.
Yep.
Anonymously.
Yeah.
And that's what this National Suicide Hotline number does.
Yep.
It can save lives. We have over 20 veterans a day commit suicide in this wonderful country, Charlton.
Wow.
And that's unacceptable.
Yep.
We don't have an administration that does anything to prevent that.
No.
But this number, this outreach number, is there for those veterans and other people that are in need, that feels the pressures of life.
Yeah.
Reach out, call somebody, talk to somebody, text somebody.
Yep.
Just make the effort.
That's all that it takes, is making that effort. And life is a gift. You got to open it every day. Speaking of opening every day, I know there's a lot of talk in the world of college football, and I just appreciate every time that we talk about it. Like we always say, this show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, the home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. When you go by and test drive yours, tell them Charlton and Big C sent you. Now, sometimes when you hear things, you tend to hear it again. There's so much talk about who the top football programs are in the United States of America for college, pro, and even high school, Big C. Big C Sports bring your pro football. We bring your college football. We even bring your high school football. I even think we talk about Pop Warner football, Big C, sometimes, but they don't need the AARP card. Before I get into Big C's thoughts for the top college football programs, say the top 32 teams of all time, I just want to reach out to some of my brethren in Silicon Valley, which I guess under the radar is becoming the sports capital of the universe. People don't think, they say Silicon Valley, that's just home of the San Jose Sharks, San Jose State football, and Santa Clara University. But if you think about the San Francisco 49ers, they're playing tonight, and also the Golden State Warriors. They, and as well as Oracle Ballpark, where the Giants play. Most all of the Bay Area teams, they're sponsored by Silicon Valley companies in Oracle, Big C. Even though there's really no major team in San Jose outside of the San Jose Sharks, which have yet to win a championship, the Giants have won the World Series, the A's have won the World Series, Golden State has won the World Series, the 49ers have won the Super Bowl, and even the Raiders have won the Super Bowls. All of those teams, they're sponsored by Oracle, Big C. Could you imagine Oracle sponsor of Big C Sports, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, when you look at all the stadiums around the country, Charlton, they've gone to internet connections within the stadium. They make the stadiums interactive because they have to find ways to draw the fans in and keep them attentive beyond just the game. So it's become nationwide when you look at all the arenas that are sponsored by some sort of techno company, Charlton, around the U.S. I mean, it's just become the new wave of advancement.
Yeah, it really has. So we look forward to things as the Universal Alliance to have Big C Sports carry an Oracle sponsorship. Thank you so much for that to the sports universe. I want to start with number 17, college football. And I thought it would make you happy. Last week you talked about having steak, and you said, I asked if you liked it rare, if you liked it medium, or if you liked it well done. And you said, and I thought you were joking, you said as long as it's not moving around on the plate, then you'll eat it. Big C, is that what you said? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I love my steak without wiggle in it. So when I put the knife on it, it doesn't want to run. It wants to stay there and let me enjoy it.
Yeah.
That's the wonderful part about having a great cut of meat and a nice glass of red wine.
Well, let's make you happy also about Crimson. The number 17, just our opinion. Everybody has their own opinion. I would say the 2009 Alabama Crimson Tide. It was the first national championship for head coach Nick Saban. And you think about with the Tide hit by Heisman Trophy winner, and you think about all the people that talk about can they get another Heisman Trophy championship. And the Heisman Trophy winner that time was running back Mark Ingram. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this was Nick Saban's start of his great run that he's had at Alabama, Charlton. He dominated the Texas Longhorns for the national championship game in the Rose Bowl out in California.
Yeah.
They were led by a defense that gave up just a mere 12 points a game, and they shut down the Longhorns' vaunted offense, and that team was led by Mack Brown back in those days, Charlton.
Yeah, it's amazing how Mack Brown, like musical chairs, shuffles around. I remember that Texas, but I thought they were going to have a chance to knock off Alabama, and I think the quarterback took a knee to the back, and things changed there. Number 16, maybe one of the best coaches, like a father figure for college football, the great Bobby Bowden. I would say 1999, Florida State, led by Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Chris Winkie. They went wire to wire as the number one team in the nation. They defeated Virginia Tech in the Sugar Bowl for the national championship, and I think that team had they were fighting like dogs on the other team, Virginia Tech. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about this Florida State team led by great Bobby Bowden, this was one of those teams that had a field goal kicker on it, Charlton. They didn't have to worry about wide right.
Yeah.
But they also were led by a senior citizen at quarterback, Chris Winkie, who came out of Major League Baseball. He had been in the farm system with the Yankees.
Yep.
He was a starting quarterback at Florida State at the age of 26. But he led the Seminoles to their first national championship under the great Bobby Bowden, Charlton. And as you mentioned, the first team to go wide and wide to win the championship on all the polls.
Yeah, and I think the great Michael Vick understands how good that team was. We're going to go back in the day. So when you talk about AARP card, I'm sure a lot of people have the AARP card that saw this team. I would say the 15th team, 1947, Notre Dame Fighting Irish, quarterback John Lujak, would go on to win the Heisman Trophy. Would you believe that defense gave up about a touchdown per game? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there's a common theme in those first three teams that you mentioned, Alabama, Florida State, and the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame from 1947. Everybody nowadays think about college football, and they want to talk about the greatest teams out there, Charlton.
Right.
They have to go back beyond the television generation. Because if you were watching football and you're a football historian and you're knowledgeable of the game and you appreciate great talent,
yep.
You go back to 1947 and think about this undefeated Irish team, Charlton, led by quarterback John Lujak.
Yep.
You win the Heisman Trophy, you win a national championship. We know that Notre Dame is a heritage program.
Oh, yeah.
That everybody around the country, Notre Dame has two followers. You either like them or you hate them. And this goes from the dominance that they've exuded over the decades.
Yeah, that's true. There's something about the Golden Domes and the movie Rudy and Play Like a Champion. And as we say to a lot of young people, no matter what you're going through, just keep going through it and play like a champion. You got to put your goals in writing. And Notre Dame, when you think about it, if you've ever seen the inside of that locker room and you're coming out of that tunnel onto the field, it says play like a champion. That means they got to do it in their mind first. Thinking of champions. Number 14, again, this is our thoughts for all time, Big C's thoughts. The 1974 Oklahoma Sooners under head coach Barry Switzer. That 1974 team was in the middle of an era of dominance in which the Sooners, believe it or not, they lost just 3 games in 5 years. That 1974 Oklahoma Sooner team, would you believe they brought home Barry Switzer's first national championship? Big C, your thoughts?
When you think about the state of Oklahoma, Charlton, and this is a state that's not vastly populated when you look at some of the major metropolitan states we have in this country, but this university has had a long lineage of championships, Charlton, going back into the 50s with the great Bud Wilkinson. And then Barry Switzer came along, dominating the Big 8 conference in football, Charlton. Yeah. He built a powerhouse out there on the plains, and that 1974 team, Charlton, led by Joe Washington at running back, just dominated the country and won a national championship.
Well, there's something about Barry Switzer, even though they've had some great coaches, Barry Switzer had a way of dealing with players. I know some people said he was a snake oil salesman, and maybe he was. But the man, he loved football so much that you knew when he was coming to you, he wanted to see if your boys could play football for the Sooners. And I think I respect him because he didn't hide his motives, Big C. I would say the number 13 program, and you'll probably hear them, just like the Escalade commercial, you'll hear it over and over again. In fact, we're still hearing it. These guys, they probably have what you call the AARP card, Big C, and they probably eat their steaks too as long as they're not wiggling around on the plate. 1961, Alabama Crimson Tide winning a national championship under the great head coach, Paul Bear Bryant. It's tough to ignore. The Tide gave up just 25 points all season, and yeah, they played more than 2 games, Big C. Your thoughts?
you think about that alone, Charlton, 25 points for an entire season.
Yeah.
That's an unheard of number. I mean, and you're playing a 10-game schedule at that time.
Yeah.
So you think about it, they're giving up an average of less than a field goal a game. Yeah. I don't know if Vegas was putting odds on games back at that point, but that 2.5 points would have meant a lot in Las Vegas.
I'm sure they did.
But you think about Alabama Crimson Tide, you're talking about a team of the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, the 2010s.
Yeah. This
has been a team for the decades, Charlton. This university, Alabama has nothing but a long, rich legacy of winning.
Yeah, it's amazing. There's a rapper by the name of DJ Khaled, and he sings, "All we do is win, 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 no matter what." But that's what the Southern schools have been doing. I want to bring it out to the West Coast. And again, Big C and I don't have to always agree on things. But Big C's thoughts, 2004, USC Trojans, quarterback Matt Leinart won the Heisman Trophy that year. Running back Reggie Bush, he would win the following year. 11 players from that 2014 were drafted into the NFL in 2006. That was as talented a group as you're going to find in college football. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, that was a very talented group that USC had under Pete Carroll, Charlton, and they were dominating football in 2004. They dominated on the field and off the field financially when you think about it, because a lot of those games, matter of fact, all of that was stripped from that program, the Heisman trophies, the national championship and all that. But the players won the game on the field, Charlton, regardless of what the media and everybody wanted to come back and say. Pete Carroll did a phenomenal job of resurrecting that USC program that was in a dismal state when he took over. He came in, he was an outsider. They were normally hiring from family. But Pete Carroll came in, and he got players to buy into him, Charlton. He got players to believe in what his philosophy was, and USC rebounded resoundingly and won a couple of national titles underneath his tutelage.
And I believe Mike Garrett was the athletic director for the University of Southern California Trojans. And now, I'm a West Coast guy, you're a Southern guy. We talk about a sad dog won't wag his tail, Big C. But there was a media, and I heard Pac-12 Bay Area people talking about it today. How do we change the media slant from the Southeastern Conference to the Pac-12, because the Pac-12 teams, they play everybody in the season except for like 2 teams in this, 12 teams. But that USC team, they were always playing the Big Ten champion, normally Michigan in the Rose Bowl. But USC, while a lot of people thought that they were the best team of all time, they shut out Auburn, this same group of players. In 2003, they actually shut out Auburn at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and I think it's the last time an Auburn team was shut out at home. And that Auburn team went on to win the SEC. The next year, they beat an undefeated Oklahoma squad 55-19, down where Oklahoma was used to playing their championship games, which was the Orange Bowl down in Florida. And there's a lot of talk that USC should have played Florida when later in the year, I think a few years after Tim Tebow was there, and they lined up Florida with Oklahoma for the national championship. And I think Oklahoma lost to Florida, I think 24-14. But that was a USC team that many people thought was the best team in the country. So I want to get your thought before we get on with the count, because just, what was the Hanging Chad? The Hanging Chads happened down in Florida also with Gore. Remember that, Bush and Gore? Do you think any validity goes with the fact that a lot of the Southern media, they were asleep when West Coast football kicks off, and they also had a lot of pull down in the SEC. That's why they could kind of pick their schedule. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, yeah, I mean, it's up to individual thoughts on who's the best team of all.
Yeah.
That SC team had a prominent team, but
yeah.
I don't think that they were the best team of all time. I mean, I could think of a half a dozen teams that could have gone neck and neck and defeated that U.S. team, and as we go through the list, you're going to see some teams that USC would have had a hard time even dressing out with.
Well, that's to my friends down in Southern California. I still want to get some Randy's Donuts, so I put in my prop for the West Coast media, even though the Pac-12 doesn't promote very well. I'm going to say we look at number 11, the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Now, people may say, Minnesota, what are you smoking on, Big C? But Big C is going back to the AARP, back to 1940. That team went 8-0. Against the 10th most difficult schedule ever, and the Gophers went on to win a national title. It is amazing. You can go back to the 1940, and you'll find teams that don't win the way now that they did back then, but they were good enough for a national championship. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, as you just mentioned about that USC team, Charlton, and the teams that they beat and shut out, you think about the strength of schedule, and if you go back and you look at the USC schedule from that year, they didn't have the 10th most difficult schedule in the history of college football at the time when they went undefeated and went down and beat Auburn and those teams of that nature.
Yeah.
And you think about the Minnesota Golden Gophers. People only look at their program now, how it exists.
Yeah.
But when you go back to the 40s, the Minnesota Gophers were in the eye of the hurricane of the Big Ten. They were the dominant team in that conference, Charlton. They had won 3 national championships during the 40s. That's how prominent that program was in Minnesota.
Yeah.
They've gone on difficult times since then because of the evolution of the Michigan and Ohio State footballs and those programs in the Big Ten, as well as Penn State.
Yeah.
But the Golden Gophers were once one of the darlings of college football back in the 40s.
Yeah, I mean, even Minnesota this year, they're coming out to California, and they're coming to California. They're not playing a Pac-12 team, but they're playing Fresno State at Bulldog Stadium. Jeff Tevers, the coach there. So they're coming west. Like a lot of times when the Big Ten came west, they were going only to the Rose Bowl and maybe down to the Coliseum to play USC. But now they're coming in to play the Mountain West champion Fresno State, so we'll see how that goes. And speaking of Mountain West, Big C, the 10th choice, and I know a lot of people east of the Mississippi might say, what are you talking about, ghetto boys in California? The 2006 Boise State Broncos. They were led by first-year coach Chris Peterson, now the head coach at the University of Washington, the Huskies. Boise State plowed through his schedule. They ranked in the top 10. The Broncos had a 43-42 overtime win over Oklahoma in the Fiesta Bowl down in Arizona, and it will go down as one of the most incredible college football games of all times. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about that Broncos team led under Chris Peterson, who is now the head coach at the University of Washington, Charlton, they entertained and shocked the nation when they beat the University of Oklahoma back in 2006 in the Fiesta Bowl.
Yeah.
They didn't have the toughest schedule. They didn't have the most talented roster. But they had players that believed in each other and believed in themselves. They opened up the season by knocking off Oregon State. Oregon State went on to win 10 games that year, a Pac-12 team, Charlton.
Yeah.
So they showed that they could play with the big boys at the start, in the ending of the season. Chris Peterson got them ranked in the top 10 of the country, Charlton. And they had one of the most electrifying bowl games in that Fiesta Bowl. I mean, everybody remembers that Statue of Liberty play, Charlton, when they scored the touchdown at the end of the game, Ian Johnson, and beat Oklahoma. One of the most memorable overtime games in college football bowl history.
Yeah, and that young man went on to propose to his girlfriend after he scored the winning touchdown. I'm sure her father didn't appreciate it because she's still in college, Big C, but it's all fair in love and war. The 2013 Florida State team, I think they'll come in at number 9. And when you think about it, the Seminoles, it was almost too easy for Florida State in 2013. That Florida State program went undefeated 1 year after losing 11 players to the NFL draft. And just for context, 18 more players from that national championship team would be drafted in 2014 and 2015. One of them was crap kick loving Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Jameis Winston. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, Charlton, this is one of those teams that I would compare to that USC team that you were talking about when you talk about 11 players being drafted.
Yeah.
They had 11 players drafted off that USC team, Charlton, that won the national championship.
Yeah.
Florida State had 11 players drafted the year before they won the national championship.
Yeah.
That showed how stacked they were talently down in Tallahassee, Florida, Charlton. But to have a true redshirt freshman quarterback, Jameis Winston, step on the field, Charlton, and catapult your team to an undefeated season and go on and win a national championship, and then have 18 of those players that played on that national championship team, Charlton, get drafted in the 2014-2015 season.
Yep.
And Jameis Winston is gone on to be a quarterback in the NFL with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Matter of fact, the first overall draft pick in the draft. I think Matt Leinart went about 11 in the first round.
Yeah, I agree very much, Big C. So that Florida State team, if Jameis Winston can look at his behavior, he has all of the talent, Big C. He reminds me of Randall Cunningham. He just does. He reminds me of a guy. He reminds me almost of Steve Young. These guys that can run and throw. He just has to he has to stay focused. He needed a coach like Al Davis from back in the day. I want to go up to the big Midwest because a lot of times in the a Buckeye is a nut, and not like the one that some people run, politicians, not that kind of nut, but it's a nut. And if you're in Ohio, football is king. I know they love the Cavaliers. Cleveland, this is for you. But Ohio State, the Buckeyes, I think they really are the most beloved franchise in Ohio. The 2002 Ohio State Buckeyes, they'll be the number 8 pick. And unless you're a diehard Buckeye fan, most are going to remember one thing from the Ohio State undefeated 2002-2003 season. And that's the double overtime win over Miami in the Fiesta Bowl for the national championship. And many people thought that game was biased toward Ohio State. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, there were some questionable calls made in that game, a late pass interference in the first overtime, which allowed Ohio State a chance to score. But you just think about Jim Tressel and that staff. That's when they had the freshman running back.
Yeah, Claret.
Maurice Claret on that team, Charlton. This was a team that came in as a vast underdog, the University of Miami. You got to remember, Miami was an unstoppable runaway 18-wheeler at that time.
Yeah.
They were the kings of the college football world.
Yeah.
And everybody was, how good was this team? Frank Gore was the third leading rushing, running back on that team. That's how good Miami was at that time. That Frank Gore, who is now number 3 on the NFL's all-time leading rushing list, was just the third best running back on that team. Maurice Claret, though, took the world by storm when he had an opportunity to win a national championship with Ohio State that year.
Yes.
It was a great game. I mean, I think the Miami Hurricanes lost Clinton Portis to a knee injury in that game, Charlton, early on, which really stemmed the tide for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Yeah, and you just think about what you just said. Frank Gore has had some major surgery. I think he had at one time hip surgery, or I know he had some issues, and he was a dominating force for the 49ers. They really loved pounding the ball to Frank Gore. Even down in the Super Bowl when they lost, they came up short to Baltimore. That's the same Frank Gore. That's one of the most dominant running backs, one of the most durable running backs in the history of the NFL universe. And he was third team in Miami back in the day. Number 7. Here's the AARP card again. I'm sure people still have them, Big Z. 1956 Oklahoma Sooners. That Sooner program, led by head coach Bud Wilkerson, we're in the middle of a 47-game win streak in the 1950s. Of all of those teams, however, the 1956 Sooners, they were flat out unstoppable. It's not just that the Sooners went 10-0, at least how they did it. They had 6 shutout wins and allowed just 5.1 points a game. I've never seen 5.1 on the scoreboard, but I'm sure they had it marked down. Big for your thoughts.
Well, Charlton, when we talk about great defenses, you talked about one earlier. The defense with Alabama only gave up 25 points on the season, and here we are looking at an Oklahoma defense, Charlton, that gave up 5.1 points a game. Think about 6 shutouts in college football.
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
That means that your opponents did not have a good day. But, we talked about the dominance of that Oklahoma program in the middle of the country. Most people only think about Barry Switzer. They think that's where Oklahoma football dominance started. No, it started with Bud Wilkerson back in the 50s, Charlton.
Yeah.
To go 47 consecutive games in college football without a loss, you got to realize how much pressure is on your team every week.
Yep.
And to win 3 consecutive national championships, Charlton,
yeah.
This team was just flat out unstoppable out on the plains out in Oklahoma.
Nah, there's something about, and you always say it, what makes a player leave California, Jamel Holloway, and go down to Oklahoma, Norman, Oklahoma? They've had players from all over the country, but it's just football. People live and breathe football, Oklahoma. The number 6 choice. And this is a team that actually broke my heart because I'm a Southern Cal guy, Big C. The 2005 University of Texas Longhorns. The one year when everything finally came together was in 2005. The Horns knocked off Ohio State on the road at the Horseshoe, and they breezed through the Big 12 play, winning every one of those games by double digits. And then they knocked off the USC Trojans, defending national champions, going for a three-peat. And of all places, the national championship game was at the Rose Bowl during Pete Carroll's dynasty. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, that was one of the more phenomenal games in college football. I mean, if you're a Texas fan, you remember every vivid play of that game. If you're a USC fan, you want to forget because USC thought that they were going to repeat as champions. But Vince Young had other things in mind, Charlton.
Yeah.
Reggie Bush won the Heisman Trophy that year.
Yeah.
He scored the go-ahead touchdown with 20 seconds to go in the game with 4th and 5.
Yeah.
Vince Young, with that phenomenal quarterback keeper around the corner with his great athleticism, Charlton, defeated the USC Trojans, and the Longhorns were able to take home the national championship.
And it was Frosty Rucker that did not understand what is outside containment. Big C, does outside containment mean you don't let someone get outside? But Frosty Rucker, he bit down when Vince Young faked the fake. Also, that was because it's real talk. Reggie Bush, we know I guess his girlfriend may have given him money. He could have been Kim Kardashian, who knows. But he inexplicably pitched the ball forward after about a 40-yard run inside the red zone. Texas recovered. We know Matt Leinart, he never runs the football except for the Bush push at Notre Dame. He went for twice on 4th down and missed it, but you had a Heisman Trophy winning running back in the backfield with Reggie Bush. Also Lindell White. And then he threw an interception in the end zone right around the end of the first half. Texas had a player with his knee down. They called it a touchdown. Now, I'm not saying things can't go wrong, but Pete Carroll did it again. This is Pete Carroll part 1. They had 3rd and 2 with about 2 minutes to play in the game. He had the Heisman Trophy winner in the backfield, both of them, Leinart and Bush. And Bush did not touch the ball. They gave it to Lindell White. And on 4th and 1, why was Reggie Bush on the sideline? Sometimes parents just don't understand. We understand why they went on probation, Big C, but it's all fair in love and war. Number 5, I'm going to get to it after what we do all the time. It's called the Big C Timeout. And memories are great. Today is a very special day in the universe. I've always talked about football and sports growing up with my brothers and sisters, and it's something that will always mean something to me. And I just really appreciate, where we're coming with Big C Sports and talking about all the things that make sports a part of my life, and I want to share it with the universe. We're going to come back and we're going to count down from 5 to 1. We're going to come back tomorrow and finish the list from 32 down to 18, and we have a few more things to talk about. As we take the Big C pause, we hope that you'll come back and enjoy the pause with us. All right, we are back on Big C Sports after the Big C timeout, also known as the Big C pause. We'll meander in and out of it. I want to say we talked about artificial intelligence. And if you didn't see the program on CNN over the weekend, it's something you got to see. If you're in stocks, you got to know what's happening with the stock market. You don't just keep your eyes closed and hope that people tell you what happened. You got to know for yourself. Artificial intelligence. And Big C, I thought I knew a lot about it. You even educated me on how artificial intelligence has been around a long time. And I was just thinking about what's going on with the baseball strike zone. You brought up the teleprompter, the Chiron assist on TV, where they will start marking where the players went. They also had it in hockey at a time. They had it in golf. But it's part of what we do because Big C Sports, I'm telling you, Silicon Valley having conversations with companies down there. They're taking over the world of sports. You can find out now, you can find out later. But I want to thank them because you can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. In fact, you can say, Google, play Big C Sports Podcast. Would you believe it'll bring up on the screen and you just go to iHeartRadio Podcast, Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a television set, and I'm going to be getting a new Fire Stick based on what Big C told me, but you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity Comcast. And I really love the app called Alexa. Say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear welcome to the show. I'll introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing. So I really appreciate all of our sponsors for their support on this beautiful August 19th. Big C, I would say the number 5 team, and it's just our opinion, they also have the AARP card, Big C. That's a good card. 1971, Nebraska Cornhuskers. Johnny Rodgers won the Heisman Trophy the following year, but it was the 1971 National Championship winning Cornhuskers that got grouped into one of the greatest college football teams of all time. They played what is considered the game of the century, a 35-31 win over the Oklahoma Sooners, and it capped off the season by winning the national championship over Alabama by the score of 38-6. And boy, those Huskers hope that that's a preview of today. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about that team, Charlton, that team had everything in the Big 12. And we've had a consistent theme about the Big 12. We've talked about the dominance of Oklahoma in the Big 12. Now Nebraska has risen its head in the Big 12, Charlton. And those teams under Bob Devaney out there on the plains of Nebraska, Charlton, were just grown men playing college football. They were a very dominant team. And you think about Johnny Rodgers, who led that team offensively. Jerry Taggy was their quarterback.
Yeah.
He was the most electrifying player in the Big 8 after Gale Sears. Gale Sears was known as the Kansas Comet. Johnny Rodgers was just Mr. Electric out in Nebraska, Charlton, winning a Big 8 title. That team featured 8 all Big 8 selections, Charlton, and 4 All-Americans on that team. Yeah,
it's amazing, and it's a shame that they now play in the Big 10. I think it's only because Nebraska had played Texas, and somehow they let Texas win. That's what many of the people in Nebraska feel, and they opted out. They wanted to bring no more money to that conference, and they bolted to the north, and they haven't been the same since Big C. But the 1995 Nebraska Cornhuskers, head coach Tom Osborne had plenty of great teams throughout his years at Nebraska. But the 1995 Huskers, they were always in the conversation as its best ever. Now, if you think of this offense, it was led by unstoppable Tommy Frazier for the quarterback. The Huskers outscored many opponents by nearly 39 points a game. They also had Lawrence Phillips the late Lawrence Phillips as one of the most dominant running backs in college football. And they had, think about it, they scored at least 35 points every time they played, and they won the national championship by beating up on the SEC Florida Gators by the score of 62-24. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, that Nebraska Cornhusker team, Charlton, this team was 24 years after the team you had just mentioned under Bob Devaney. Todd Osborne was one of his assistants, took over the program, Charlton. And when you talk about players being electrifying, Tommy Frazier, who was the quarterback of that team, Charlton, probably was the most impactful player in Nebraska history as far as determining the outcome of so many games in that great program during the time that he was there. And going on to win a national championship under his helm, just a great feat for Tommy Frazier and the Nebraska Cornhuskers.
And thinking about that, Now, I know NFL talked about the Pittsburgh Steelers. They was known as the steroid era team where, Mike Webster featured in the movie Concussion, and Dr. Ben Marlowe and Will Smith, the great actor. And that team in Nebraska, they were just known for lifting weights, Big C, and they won for many, many years. Number 3, we love this great country, and this country has people that sacrifice their lives for it. But you think about our number 3 choice, and maybe people won't agree, but the 1945 Army Cadets, the 45 Army team, led by Heisman Trophy winner Doc Blanchard, they would finish the year number 1 offense and the number 1 defense in college football, with one of the toughest strength of schedules in the country. You would not expect that for a cadet team, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, the Army, Charlton, was the most dominant football program in America during the 40s, along with the University of Minnesota.
Yeah.
You think about it. You talk about Doc Blanchard winning the Heisman Trophy on a team that was number 1 in the country in scoring. Think about it. His backfield mate won the Heisman Trophy the following year, Glenn Davis. This team was, was just one of the dominant eras in college football. And you think about the 1945 Army team.
Yep.
This team went a stretch of 3 years under Coach Earl Blake. Did not lose a single game, Charlton.
Wow.
So when we talk about the dominance of college football, everybody wants to talk about the team that they just saw on television and how great a game that they played. We talked about the University of Oklahoma in the 50s under Coach Bud Wilkinson, not losing a game in 47 tries, Charlton. And here's a great Army program under Earl Blaylock.
Yeah.
Did not lose a game over a 3-year stretch with 2 back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners and a couple of national titles, Charlton. And these are the midshipmen. What's so great about this Army team, Charlton?
Yeah.
That these were young men that didn't have aspiration of playing pro football.
That's right.
They had aspiration of being professional servicemen and saving and working for our country, Charlton.
Yep, and I know, and again, our thoughts and prayers are always with everyone who's ever served this great country. Love America, but it doesn't stay great by itself. It takes people with great sacrifice and love and devotion. Big C, I'm sure Lynn Swan would feel, and again, media, a lot of talk about Pac-12. I'm out here part of it too. I remember trying to get a media credential, and I've worked at Cal Berkeley since 1996. But last year, I was just trying to get a press pass to cover North Carolina as they came in to play Cal Berkeley. I felt like they studied me more than my colonoscopy, Big C. It was more intrusive than that. And I just told them who we were and what network we're on. I name dropped some people that I worked with at Cal Berkeley back in the day. And it took them 4 days to get back to me. By the time they said yes, I had chosen another game. So part of the Pac-12's problem is they're antithetical to media. You got to invite people in. That's how things get changed, and that's how people notice you. 1992, USC Trojans, if there's anything to take away from the 1972 Trojans, not only was USC incredible, but everyone knew if the Trojans were voted number 1 on everyone's ballot, in the coaches and media polls, everyone, even former broadcaster Keith Jackson, whoa, Nelly, said that 1972 Trojans were the greatest team of all time. When you get that kind of praise, it's very tough to ignore. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, I think this Trojan team of 1972 would have beat any Trojan team of any era. And I witnessed this team, Charlton. This was a nasty bunch of players. They had a defense called the Wild Bunch.
Yeah.
They beat up on everybody physically. They had speed. They had size. They had a ton of pro players on that team, Charlton. And when you think about the stingy offense and stingy defense that they had, this team beat, Charlton, 6 nationally ranked teams. They beat number 4 Arkansas. They beat number 15 Stanford. They beat number 18 Washington. They beat number 14 UCLA. They beat number 10 Notre Dame. They beat number 3 Ohio State in the Rose Bowl for a 42-17 victory that propelled them to that national championship that year, Charlton. But when you think about this team, you talked about Lynn Swan. He was on that team. Pat Hayden was the quarterback on that team, Charlton. So they had a whole lot of NFL players, and as you say, old Nelly, Keith Jackson, talking about this team. This was one of the greatest football teams of all time, Charlton. As they talk about teams that could play in eras, I think John Robertson's USC team of 1972, Charlton, could have played in a couple different eras in college football.
Well, I'm sure Lynn Swallow is trying to write letters to see if any of those AARP guys had kids. He wants to get their kids to come play for the mighty Trojans. And I'm going to finish off with our top choice, Big C spots. In 2001, the Miami Hurricanes head coach Larry Coker, he didn't have a Heisman Trophy winner on his team, but he had 17 future first-round draft picks and 38 total draft picks of the 22 starters in the Nebraska Shellacking. I think 11 of 18 were drafted in the first round. And this team outscored opponents 512 to 117. Their season ended with a convincing 37-14 Rose Bowl victory over Nebraska for the national championship. That team was the U. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, as you mentioned some teams earlier in our selection that you thought might be considered for number one, you have to get to number one to see why Miami is number one. When you just talked about the number of talented players that they had
Amazing
on that roster, Charlton, 17 first-round draft picks.
Yeah.
No team in college in football has ever had 17 first-round draft picks
yeah.
on a roster.
Yeah.
And 11 of 18 in one year, Charlton had won a national championship without a Heisman Trophy winner on the team.
Yeah.
That's how dominant the University of Miami was during a run with four different coaches. Starting out, you had Erickson, you had Croker, you had Snellenberger.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember.
Jimmy Johnson was one of them.
Jimmy Johnson.
Yeah.
You had four great coaches down there with that program, Charlton, and they all were able to bring in talent.
Yep.
The University of Miami built a legacy when they were known as the U, as the most dominant football factory of modern time in college football. And we could take any team that we've named on this 17-team list, Charlton.
Yeah.
I don't think any of those teams would have lasted a half with Miami. That's how dominant that Miami program was when they won that last national championship, Charlton, in 2001.
Well, they were very dominant. So Big C Sports, we told you, we'll be bringing you all throughout the football season. Big C's going to break down the preview of every NFL game from week 1 all the way into the Super Bowl in Miami. And then he's going to come back on Monday and give you a wrap-up of what happened. And then we talk about Monday night and Thursday night games in between. But that's what you're going to get with Big C Sports. Also, with college football, we'll do the same thing. We're going to preview college football games coming up. And then we'll come back on Monday and talk about what happened over the weekend. We're also going to do Big C's Friday Night Lights, backed by popular demand, Big C. A lot of high school kids. You can follow Big C Sports for your high school, college, and pro sports. We just want to do it all. Life is so wonderful. You just got to enjoy it. You get up and do something. I remember talking to a friend of mine from the Bay Area, and she was just asking me about some things that are going on in her life, and I just reminded her, life is a gift. You got to celebrate it with who's there. Open your eyes. That's your support team. You just got to do it. Speaking of opening your eyes, there's a lot of pictures, Big C. When you think of opening your eyes, some of these guys on the mound, they make you want to close your eyes because they can be so dominant on the mound. And I think about it over the weekend, I was asking you this. I love Cleveland because of the Big C on their hats. Cleveland! I want to get your thoughts. The Cleveland Indians, they've been on a tear lately. You think about pitcher Mike Clevenger. He struck out 10 in 5 innings, shutout innings. Mike Freeman had 3 extra base hits as the Tribe went on to dominate the New York Yankees 8-4 and for a 4-game split. This is the same Cleveland team that has been flying under the radar all season long. Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, this is what you have to do if you want to be in the playoff hunt, is that you have to knock off the top teams when they come into your house and want to play a little baseball against you.
Yeah.
And that's what Cleveland has been doing the last month of the season, Charlton, is that they've gone out and they've taken care of business. They have not lost a series the entire month of August.
They're amazing. And we keep talking about who's going to be the team that comes out of that division. And it's all fair and loving where a lot of good series have happened over the past couple of weeks, Big C. The biggest series in baseball over the weekend. It was down there in the South, Big C, but all that heat and humidity is. And I wonder if the Dodgers went down there and had too many ribs that were moving on the plate. You say make sure they're not moving. But think about what might be a preview of the NLCS. The Dodgers visiting the Braves. The Braves all-star outfielder Raul Acuna Jr., he was banished for a lack of hustle. Rafael Ortega stepped in and hit his first Major League Grand Slam, giving the Braves a 5-3 victory with a 2-1 win over the LA Dodgers. And I want to make a juxtaposition with what happened to Acuna and what's going on with Antonio Brown. The Braves manager, he said, look, the buck stops here. He didn't go on TV and say, well, we're just going to wait until he shows up. He put the man on the bench and said, get out of here, because you're hurting the team when you don't hustle. And I know a lot of people today, they say, I can't believe he treated an athlete that way. But Big C, isn't that how you get the whole team to play team ball, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that's what team sports is all about. Raul Acuna Jr. is one of the young budding superstars in the National League. He's a member of the 30-30 Club, Charlton, just in his second year in the major leagues. But sometimes that goes to a young player's head.
Yep.
The Braves gave him a new contract extension at the beginning of the season. If they locked him down now for a little over $100 million for 7 years, Charlton, they didn't have to worry about arbitration later and paying him $300 million. But he's gotten a little fat-headed because of his great numbers, Charlton, at just 21 years of age. Got lazy out there on the field, figured I don't have to hustle in the heat.
Yeah.
The manager, and I love Brian Snedeker for what he did, Charlton.
Yeah.
He made a statement to his ball club.
Yeah.
If we're going to win a championship, we're going to win it as a team, not with one individual.
That's right.
And I think that was a wake-up call for Acuna. You bring in his backup hits a grand slam, the first grand slam of his major league career, Charlton.
Yeah.
That showed Raul that everybody can hit the ball out of the park.
Yeah.
But you can also hustle in the meantime.
Yeah, that's true. That, to me, we talk about the Little League World Series. If you're a young man, or even if you have your AARP card, I think everybody respects a leader. If you're a leader and you let people run you over, you're not a leader. I mean, I think that's why the Braves are so strong this year. Washington Nationals, they matched the team record with 8 home runs, including 2 by Juan Soto, as the Nationals routed the Milwaukee Brewers unexpectedly by the score of 16-8. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, here's a team, Charlton, absent of Bryce Harper, hitting a team record 8 home runs in a contest. Bryce has been struggling with the Phillies, but the Nationals haven't given up. They lack in pitching this year, Charlton. They're in the middle of the pack in the division, but it just goes to show out as a professional. You have to come out and play each game, Charlton, and prove that you're worthy of being in the major league.
Yeah, they got to do it all the time. Minnesota Twins, they're still swinging bats. Think about it. Up north, George Polanco, he cleared the bases with a tie-breaking triple in the 8th inning. He helped the Twins to his 6-3 victory in the first 4-game sweep of the Texas Rangers this season. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this is the team, the Minnesota Twins, that have played long ball all year long, Charlton. They've been leading the major leagues in home runs, and they're still hitting them deep, getting a triple to clear the bases to get that victory. The Twins are in the playoff hunts. It would be great to see the Twins once again in the playoffs up there at Target Field in Minneapolis.
Speaking of target, you got to hit the target. We talked about artificial intelligence and that strike zone on TV. They put a little triangle around the box or a square around the plate so you can see it. Well, Houston Astros, they're maintaining their dominance in the AL West. Zach Greinke threw 7 smooth innings for his 200th win, pitching in for the first place Houston Astros, and a 4-1 victory over the Oakland Athletics. And the A's are playing on tough, but Greinke was throwing heat. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about winning those divisional games. The A's are fighting for a wild card berth. The Astros are looking to stay in first place out in the West, Charlton. They're one of those teams that are looking to be in the ALCS championship, and with those dominant pitchers, with Greinke now, getting in his groove late in the season, the Astros looking to be headed towards facing it off in the ALCS.
Well, it's amazing. Jose Quintana pitched 7 crisp innings. Anthony Rizzo had a 2-run homer for the Chicago Cubs. They dominated the Pittsburgh Pirates 7-1 at the Little League World Series. And if you haven't seen, I think it was the manager for the Chicago Cubs and many other big league managers, when you see them embrace these young players, and they know those young kids want to be in 20 years what these managers are or athletes are. And it reminded me, Big C, of Field of Dreams. Kevin Costner built the movie that you build it, they will come. I love when grown folks give young kids hope by just putting their hand on the not Joe Biden, not being flippant, but touch people on the shoulder and say, you can do it. You can be anything you want to be, Big C. I really appreciate the sentiments, your thoughts.
Well, when I thought about that game, Charlton, playing at the Little League World Series of the Cubs and the Pirates, all of those players from America, and matter of fact, all those players that played on both of those teams, played Little League Baseball at some point in their life, Charlton. So the aspiration of those young players that want to get to the major leagues, to have some of their heroes come there live and personally interact with them, Charlton, you think about what that means to so many young people.
Yeah.
We see so many professional athletes that are standoffish, that are untouchable nowadays. But baseball players have always had that knack about them, Charlton. They go up and they sign the gloves, they sign the balls, they sign the caps, and the programs of so many young fans that are in the stands. They toss baseballs in the stands during the game. This is just a great marketing move by Rob Manfred, the commissioner of Major League Baseball, Charlton, to have those players go out and interact with the youth of America.
Yeah.
What a great motivational situation.
Well, you think about on this date, August 19th, 2011, Danny Almonte, he threw a perfect game in the Little League World Series as well. So it's just great when the older generation, you know, one of the things that I love about my life is just thinking back to when I can remember. I always had my grandparents and great-grandparents around, and of course my parents, and then brothers and sisters. But I remember the first time I went pheasant hunting, it was with a man by the name of Dave Atkins. I had a 12-gauge shotgun out. Things are different. Some people don't believe in hunting for wildlife, but it was like a village. It took a village, and I love when our older AARP generation, they share time with the young folks, trying to show them things. Speaking of sharing time, Howard University is bringing back its golf team for the first time in decades with a big assist from former NBA star Steph Curry. Now, Curry announced Monday that he will financially support the Bison's golf team for the next 6 years. Howard, a historically black university in Washington, D.C., so I doubt opponents will be given any commitments from it. They plan to have a men's and women's teams in place for the 2020-2021 season. This is one of the most generous gifts in the history of Howard University, said athletic director Kerry Davis. And in fact, it's one of the most generous gifts in the history of the universe. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you think about giving back and paying forward, and I commend Stephon Curry for this marvelous gesture to Howard University, historical black college in Washington, D.C. These are the things we just saw earlier in the year at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Charlton, where Mr. Robinson paid off the tuition of all the graduating class at Morehouse College in Atlanta.
Yeah.
This is what we need more of in the black community, those athletes that are making millions of dollars. And it's your money to do as you choose.
Oh, yeah.
But when you pay forward and you make life easier for others, Charlton, then they can pay forward. This is how the momentum gets going in a society, in a culture, is that when you help out those that are less fortunate, that are trying to get to the level that you are, and you know by paying forward, we see what Tiger Woods meant to the golf world and to the black community, Charlton, as far as golf went.
Yeah.
Now we have Stephon Curry paying into a historical black college, Charlton, to inspire those young men and women that want to be on the golf team at Howard University, where they can compete on the national scale in Division I golf now, Charlton. They'll have all the equipment. They'll be able to travel. Second-class golf citizens out there, Charlton.
Yeah.
They'll be able to compete on the national college scale. And I admire Steph Curry, and I would encourage many other professional athletes. Don't just sit there and admire Steph. Do what Steph did.
Yeah.
Help out those young athletes that are in need.
Yeah, you have to do that. He puts his money where his mouth is. And speaking of golf, the golf world, all eyes are on Atlanta. This week, the $15 million mega prize, the Tour Championship, the FedEx Cup, at East Lake in Atlanta. Notable golfers who will be missing: the great Tiger Woods, 15-time major champion. Last year's winner neither. Phil Mickelson, Jordan Spieth, Jason Day, or Shane Lowry. They didn't make the cut. Golf is always evolving. $15 million, that's only half of what Antonio Brown's getting. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, East Lake, is the grand prize in the golf world. I know everyone talks about Augusta, but when it comes to money, East Lake is that $10 million payday for the champion, Charlton.
Yeah.
Tiger Woods was able to capture it last year. But when you talk about those notable golfers that are not there, not just Tiger Woods, you got Spieth, you got Mickelson, you got Day, you got former winners of this event, Charlton. You're talking about crowd favorites. What is it going to be to see of people like this week at East Lake? last year we saw that memorable wave moving down the 18th green with Tiger.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, it overran Tiger as he was going to close out his championship at East Lake last year, Charlton. Will we see that same type of fanfare and excitement this week in Atlanta?
Well, I want to just say there's a lot of money on the line. Justin Thomas held off a late charge by Patrick Cantlay on Sunday to win the BMW championship by 3 shots. He finished with 25 under. Big C, it's hard to do 25 under. In 5 days, he did it in 4, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, 25 under, Charlton, is a phenomenal score. I think he shot about 263 for the tournament.
Yeah.
But this is a guy that's going out there basically playing almost mistake-free.
Yeah.
Can he keep that momentum going into Atlanta this week, Charlton? Because if he does, he's going to go home with a sweet $10 million purse.
And I'll take it. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, worldwide on the #1 podcast network in the universe on iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcast. You can say, Google, play Big C Sports Podcast. It will pop up on the screen and just press Big C Sports. You can also follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Spreaker. You can follow Big C Sports on YouTube. If you have a TV at home or coming soon, Fire Stick for Big C Sports, you can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast. If you have the app called Alexa, just say, Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You'll hear from our sponsors. You'll hear Welcome to the Show. I'll introduce Big C, and he'll do his thing as the Mystic. And I really appreciate all of our sponsors for just being there for us and helping us grow. I also want to say, if you look at the UFC 241, Nate Diaz defeated Anthony Pettis. And no one thought that he would beat him, but Pettis had a broken foot in the first round. But you can't take anything away from Diaz, Big C. But I still think that he's not all there, even though if you win enough fights, people overlook it. Big C, your thoughts on that performance?
Well, Charlton, we've seen a lot of athletes be injured and others been able to take advantage of that situation and win championships.
Yeah.
You know, you've got a broken foot. It's going to be hard to compete in an MMA event. Not only do you have to dance around, Charlton, you got to use that foot to kick people with. So it left him at a huge disadvantage. I think Nate Diaz will take the win, nevertheless.
He'll take the win. Now, I've heard, again, the fight was not in Vegas. Yeah, I'm cynical, so what? But do you know anyone with a broken foot that keeps fighting and jumping around on that foot? I mean, sometimes you got to set up another McGregor fight with Diaz. Who knows? No one really cares about Pettis. That's just my cynical opinion. Daniel Cormier. This is why you should listen to your corner man. You think about, he was telling us Steffi's a good fighter. But Cormier refused to wrestle this guy, get him on the ground. He tried to stand up and box with him. And that's why he lost that fight, Big C. What is it about athletes that the ego gets so big that they think their cornermen don't know what they're seeing, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, he should have realized he might have had a problem just at the start of the fight with the reach advantage that he was suffering from, Charlton.
Yeah.
You know, he was outsized by his opponent, and his opponent took advantage of that. If you're not going to get in there and grapple and wrestle, Charlton, with a guy who has a 6-inch reach advantage over you, you're going to have a long night. As a matter of fact, he ended up having a short night getting knocked out.
It's all fair level war. You always say it's amazing the generosity of men willing to get beaten up just for money, Big C. Tonight's Major League Baseball roundup, Kansas City at Baltimore. You have Washington at Pittsburgh, Seattle at Tampa, San Diego at Cincinnati, Milwaukee at St. Louis, Los Angeles Angels at Texas, Detroit at Houston, Chicago at Minnesota, and Colorado at Arizona. Big C, I just want to close out tonight's podcast with just your thoughts tonight. Garoppolo, I think he took $137 million. I don't mean to shortchange him at the bank, Big Z. It's preseason, but there's so much pressure on this guy to do what Colin Kaepernick did, Steve Young did, and Joe Montana did, and that's a Super Bowl or bust. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't know if it's Super Bowl or bust for Jimmy Garoppolo because there will always be excuses. When you look at the level of quarterbacks in the NFL today, the money that he's getting is average money as far as a quarterback goes. Will the 49ers be able to catapult themselves?
And we'll find out, and you can find out too every Monday through Friday. Yeah, go right ahead, Big C. Had a little static on your
They're
microphone.
going to lay down and accept that from them.
Well, I don't think they'll lay down and step it. You know, our phone lines are bugged, so every now and then you hear some static. Putin, we're still voting for the person who was born in the United States of America, and you can vote too every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide when you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and them good old boys down south. As we always tell you, there's never, ever an excuse for domestic violence. If you know any man or woman going through that garbage, please call 911, because no one should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. As we always tell you, on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day. I love you, Todd.